What's going on, my broskiis? My name is Toadski, back again, here to bring you guys yet another One Piece Treasure Cruise video. And in today's video, we're doing a tier list video for Pirate Rumble. This is something that a lot of people continuously ask for. People really want to know, like, what I think in terms of what I think the best, teams in Rumble are. I will say that I'm not, like, a 100%, like, connoisseur, and, like, I'm not the end-all, be-all conversationalist for Pirate Rumble. I like Pirate Rumble. I think it has some fun aspects to it, and I do think that the rewards given in Pirate Rumble need a little bit of an overhaul, but we'll be discussing my opinions and what I think the top 10 best teams are in Rumble. I'm not going to give you like exact team setups. We're going to be using the Rumble sheet. Shout out to Naito, who is the creator of this exact sheet. This is a wicked thing, a wicked resource. I've made a dedicated video for this, so I'll leave a link to the resource in the description of this video for you guys to go ahead and check out. But we're going to be using this resource to give my opinion about what I think the best characters in the game are, or the best teams you could be using in Pirate Rumble are. So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump in with my number 10. So in my number 10 position, I have the Shooter team. Now, Shooters recently got the addition of this guy right here, being the S-Bear. Now, I do think S-Bear is a pretty solid unit, and you can use him in nearly any team that you want, so long as you're not using int characters on your squad. S-Bear is going to be a nice character to shove in those teams. He's a 20 cost unit, does pretty good stuff. And look, this is not like a full team comp that you should like take one for one. This does give you like some different options that you could potentially look at. He's only got like literally one screen for shooters because there's really not a lot of good shooter characters in Pirate Rumble. In terms of the Sugo Fest exclusives, S-Bear is very, very good. Kuma as well, he's actually pretty solid unit, even though he's more strength focused, is pretty good. This guy though, this Super Tandem Ace, he's an anniversary exclusive character, which is the downside, very difficult to get a hold of, but he is a good character. He's got good stats, his Rumble ability is good, his special ability is very solid with defense down and then doing really good damage to the opponent. We've got this Sayuta, who's a nice support unit you could be using. Isho and Borsalino are actually a really good unit as well. They do a lot of damage, and that's one thing that shooter characters really lack, is a lot of the times shooters have pretty good Rumble abilities, but their specials lack heavily in not being able to output enough damage. And Borsalino and Isho are one of the characters on shooter squads that can actually do very, very good damage. So be on the lookout for them. Raizo and Shinobu, another Rumble character you can look out for. You can put on just about any team, 20 cost character. Great special with them as well. I don't really know too much about the Frankie. He could be a good unit. I actually haven't looked into him that much. In terms of the other subsidiary characters, using a full side quick squad with V2 Kuzan, I think is actually a really solid idea as well, because Kuzan's got some nice abilities. Chopper's got great Rumble abilities. Special ability is not great, but he does have a great Rumble ability. Usopp and Yasop, in my opinion, are a bit outdated. Ace, not a big fan of him in Rumble. Borsalino is an option. I don't really think that Apu is going to be a good option as well. Rebecca Toy Soldier can work if you're running that Psy shooter squad. Actually works pretty well. Ein, probably not a good choice. Frankie, you can potentially use him, but that's one of the things with shooters is they have okay characters, but they just need a couple more key pieces to really build the good teams. As I said, they've got good Rumble abilities. A lot of the times their stats are not an issue. It's just that their specials aren't good enough when you compare it to some of the other teams that we're going to be having a look at. So this is my number 10 position for best Rumble teams you can be building currently right now. Moving on, we're going to look at strikers as my number 9 position. A lot of people like building striker teams. Personally, I've never liked them because they always seemed super clunky. However, with the introduction of Versus Law, that does make things a little bit more interesting, as Versus Law is one of the characters you can put on your team to help counter opposing slasher teams, and I think building in that regard might be really good. As we move further up this list, you guys will see where slashers are going to be positioned. Building a striker team to specifically combat slashers, I think, is a pretty good idea. Albeit that counter team that you do build, it's not perfect. Like, it's not going to work all the time. It does have some good ideas. Law is great against that, but it's not perfect. Jack is a great option for health cuts. Tesora is like a mainstay. If you're building a striker team, you pretty much have to put Tesora on it to make it work. Roger Whitebeard, even though his abilities are more slasher focused, he just works so well because he is a striker unit and his special is one of the best Rumble specials in the game. Luffy Yamato, surprisingly, not a bad option. Their Rumble ability is Rainbow, so you don't have to worry about what team you're putting them on. And their special is actually really good, especially once you get into the final 50 seconds of a game. The one thing that really lets down striker teams is that their Rumble rare recruits are really mediocre. You've got Conjurer, who has an okay Rumble ability. Sanderzonia, Marigold, that combo you could potentially use because Marigold is a striker, but realistically you can put them on whatever team you want. Sasaki is a lot of the times people will be using. Neko Mamashi, Cat Viper, also a character you could potentially use. I don't think these characters are really good for specifically striker teams, so I wouldn't really suggest that, but it's an option that you can go with. The new Whitebeard probably wouldn't do that either. It's just strikers, they have a lot of damage. They can output a lot of damage very quickly with some severe health cuts, and then you can use, Luffy Yamato to wave clear or fix damage from Tesoro or even Kuzan. Some people still will adopt as well. But they just don't have like really good defenses either. They're more like a glass cannon kind of team, which in my opinion is not really good for Pirate Rumble. You need a team that can do everything, and strikers, they're a little bit of a gimmick. So moving on to our next one is going to be focusing on Cerebrals. Now, Cerebrals do have an interesting kind of setup where you can build them in a lot of different ways. I think the best way to build Cerebrals currently is using the full int team with characters like Atlas. You can use the new Oiran Yamato, Uta, you could use Vegapunk. I mean, Nami Karina can basically go in any team, so if any team you can fully abuse the full effects of Nami Karina, probably going to be a pretty good option. This Chopper from Egghead, not really that great. Inazuma's a great Rumble rare recruit, so you can chuck that on. I think the Beppo and Law character, surprisingly, actually not too bad, so that is something you can look out for. But the funny thing is like when they're like suggesting characters for your Cerebral team, and then you've got characters that really aren't Cerebral, it just goes to show that, yeah, Cerebral aren't really one of the better teams in Rumble, but they do have a lot of really cool things going on because the synergy that int Cerebral team actually has is pretty good. Characters like the Robin and Koala are also a pretty good option because their whole kit is like focused around debuffing Free Spirit, and Free Spirit are also one of the better classes in Pirate Rumble, so you can also build with that in mind. And also 10th Anniversary Shanks, this character can go on a lot of different teams, and this character, while it doesn't do like a crazy amount of damage to the opponent, the good thing about Shanks is that he can provide support to your team, buffing your character's stats, and also, more importantly, some more defensive focused stuff with applying a shield buff. And that shield buff can make your team survive way longer than it really should. Specifically good for slasher teams, which we'll talk about a little bit later. But I do think that Cerebral are a little bit better than the previous two that we talked about as my number 8 team. Alright, so we're moving on up to number 7, which is the Quick Squad. Some people may disagree with this one, and if you do, it is what it is. But I feel like Quick... a lot of people just love quick teams in Rumble. I just think that they're kind of mediocre. Yes, they're probably more consistent than the teams that we've just talked about. I think as a whole, it's a very consistent team, especially when you're more focusing on the Driven Powerhouse stuff, because in terms of Driven Powerhouse, just have a look at this bench. These 3 units are amazing for quick teams, and all of them being Driven and Powerhouse collectively, so you can run some really cool squads here with like Shiryu. You've got Kaido, who is still amazing, versus a Kaino, who is still very, very good. But again, this is another team you can run in multiple different ways. Like, as you see, we're scrolling through, there's like different ways to build it. So this is one that they're using, the new versus Luffy. Now, versus Luffy, I don't think is as valuable in Rumble as other quick characters are. I think he's okay, but there's definitely better units you could potentially be using. Tesoro, we talked about him on the striker team, but the fact that he is here is a good thing. And then Jinbei, look, I don't suggest this kind of team setup. Let's scroll down and have a look. This is the slasher, the quick slasher team. This team is much more difficult to build. Roger and Odin being a Super Sugo Fest exclusive, and then you got Cracker, normal legend, but with level limit break becomes a lot better. Smoothie, Rumble legend, very difficult to get a hold of. And the thing is, with the whole team and the way that it's built, you want to run as many slasher quick units as possible in order for Momo and Roger Odin to kind of work completely, and that can be really difficult to do, especially if you want to run like more optimally with the Cross Guild. Cross Guild is really good with this team as well, also being a quick slasher that you can run. And then Tesoro, I think, is also another character you can slide on here as well. Even though, Tesoro is not a slasher, you can kind of put him on the team and then rely on your bench fulfilling the other slasher requirements, as they've said here. I think that's a really good option. I don't think Zoro is a good option, but you could potentially run that if you wanted to. This is another one here, a quick shooter team. I wouldn't run down this. I would not go down this route at all, but hey, it's an option, right? This is the old school, quick team that we all know and love, the quick driven powerhouse kind of focus team. This team is proven to work very effectively. You can use this generically against a lot of teams. though I wouldn't use it against decks. But like if you're going up against specifically a strength team, being able to fully abuse Legend Sugar with the severe debuffs against strength is a really good option too. Some good options here, like you can run Cracker on the front line. Imagine running Cracker and Tezora on the front line, the amount of special CT your team has. Kaido and also Akainu have like amazing special CT stuff by themselves, as well as Shiryu. So you can run some pretty cool stuff with quick driven and quick powerhouse focused stuff. This is a quick free spirit focused team. I haven't tested this one personally. I don't think this team would be that great, but hey, it's an option. Quick Cerebral, there's actually a decent amount of quick Cerebrals that could work. I don't think this team is really that good because it just loses to a lot of other stuff, because this team is not super strong offensively, but there's again, just options. Quick Powerhouse, probably wouldn't use this one either. So there you go, lots of options for quick. I think quick driven powerhouse is like probably the best kind of team you could build at the moment, but I will admit that the quick slasher team does also have some nice stuff as well. Pretty good offensively, but defensively this team is not as good. So the next team we're going to have a look at is going to be the strength team. I think the strength team is actually really solid. The thing about the strength team though is that it just straight up loses in a lot of instances to like quick teams with Sugar. Like Sugar just destroys this team, but not too many times that's going to happen where you blindly have to go into a quick team with this team. But the thing is even if you do, accidentally use this team against a quick team, you can still come out on top, which is the crazy thing about this. The really cool thing about the strength team is that you've got a character like Jack, which has like a Rainbow Rumble ability that works for your squad. He has a really low special CT that can provide crazy amounts of HP cuts to the opponent. And then you can top that all off with a further health cut with Blackbeard, also providing really good defense down capabilities. And then supercharging your CT with Sanji and Kobe, and also Kobe applying haste, which is the perfect setup for the 9.5 anniversary Luffy. This is one of the best characters in Pirate Rumble. He does absurd amounts of damage through defense. If you come up against a strength team and you see this guy is about to run up and use his special, you're going to be in trouble. It does a lot of damage. And then you have a look at that bench. You've got Raizo Shinobu, one of the most annoying characters to come up against. And then you've got Kuma as well, who can also do very, very good damage through defense, especially now at 20 cost. Very, very annoying to go up against. But then you have a look at the other characters you could potentially use. Magma Kaido is still a good option. V1 Whitebeard, also very, very good, especially with level limit break. Very low special CT for a significant health cut against the opponent. Only real drawback with Whitebeard is that his rumble ability is trash. It's complete garbage, but his special ability at a low CT, very, very good. Strength has some of the best Rumble rare recruits in the game as well. Sandersonia Marigold, good combo. You've got Arlong, you have King, Otama, Law, and then these two guys being legends at low cost. You got Sanji, Strength has probably the best array of Rumble rare recruits that you could potentially use, which definitely helps out. So if you end up pulling on a Rumble banner, more often than not, because Strength has just so many Rumble rare recruits, you're probably going to pull a couple of them. Cracker, the Strength Cracker is another one that you could potentially use, so Strength's got a wide variety of different units. Kaku, another one here. Probably wouldn't go down this route of Strength Slasher. Look, it's a Strength Slasher team, and they're still putting Roger Whitebeard in here just because this character is just that good, right? These characters do actually boost Slasher, which makes a bit of sense, but I wouldn't really suggest a Strength Slasher team. This is a Strength Striker team. Probably wouldn't advise to go down this route either. A Strength Shooter team. This actually technically could work. Kuma's very good. Ace is usable. This guy's good. This guy is okay. The Boa Hancock is actually really good as well. And then they put the Luffy on the bench. So, this is an option. Probably not that good, though. Let's be real here. Strength Powerhouse. Look, a lot of these characters are just... You're not going to use them in that scenario. This is the optimal strength build that you have here. Jack, Kobe, Sanji, 9.5 anniversary Luffy. Blackbeard is probably replaceable, but the thing about Blackbeard is his rumble ability is so good, providing huge defensive buffs to strength. Strength is not really that good defensively, so getting any little bit of defense is valuable for strength, and Blackbeard can provide that as well as have a good special ability. But if you didn't have Blackbeard, you could just straight up replace that with Kaido. That would work. I know everyone's going to have this Akainu from the Rumble season. He could slide on the strength team as well, potentially. It's just that you lose out on quite a lot of defensive abilities here. But luckily, Jack can provide a little bit of that for you as well. So I think Strength currently is my 6th rated Rumble team as of this current time right now. Alright, so now we move on to Dex. Now, Dex has gone through a lot of evolutions over the time. So this is my number 5 team as it stands right now in Pirate Rumble. Dex is a very, 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 very good team. They have a lot of different ways to build it. This was like the old style with Cat Viper, Dogstorm, really old school kind of Dex team. But as it stands right now, like this top one here, this is pretty much like unit for unit the exact same team that I'm currently running. The only characters I would run different is, instead of Sober Mask, I like Bullet. I actually think Bullet is a lot better, though Sober Mask does have level limit break, which does make him pretty good. I really like Bullet's damage though, but one for one, this is the exact same team that I use for my Dex team. This team is really, really good. It's so good, in fact, that you could use this team like against any like non-quick team. Like a lot of the times you're trying to run teams a little bit more optimally, but because this team is so good, you can just use it against a lot of other teams and it's just going to work. Blackbeard is amazing health cut mechanics, half stats with Big Mom and does crazy damage. Kaido, new addition to the Dex team that come out recently, great synergy with Big Mom. This Kaido is so good. He does so much damage, ignoring defense, great rumble ability across the board, and Ace as well, providing some special CT charge. Do note though that in order for Ace to get his full abilities to activate, you need either a Luffy, a Sabo, or a Garp on your team, and because you're running like all of these units, it sometimes can be difficult to actually apply that, which is why a lot of the times you'll just use Garp because he's a 20 cost rumble character. If you don't have Garp, you'd probably replace one of the legends on this team for this Super Tandem Luffy that everyone got for free. And of course, even if you don't have like some of these units in the top row, because you've got a lot of Super Sugo Fest exclusives here, you can run something a little bit different. This is a more defensively focused team with this Super Tandem Luffy. Roger, he's got a really good health cutting special. Doflamingo is a character that a lot of people use on their Dex team for a while because his special ability does so much damage when the clock is at a low count. So I think when the clock falls below 30 counts, his special just goes off. It just does so much damage. So he does like a bunch of hits. So Dofi in the late game is really, really strong. Yamato is very good if you're only going up specifically against quick enemies. Queen is an option defensively. Cavendish is an option. Dex also has a lot of good Rumble Rare recruits. Like we talked about, like Pell is probably the best Dex Rumble Rare recruit, but you got Dalton is very good. You've got Sanji's very good. Mori is very good. Bullet's very good. Chinjiao is just a really annoying utility character. He's good for debuffing your opponent. Cavendish is probably the weaker of the ones here. We move on a little bit though into some other Dex compositions. I don't really like this team at all. I just think Dogstorm and Cat Viper are very, very outdated at this current point in time, so I wouldn't advise to go down this route. However, if you just don't have the assets, then you're going to have to do what you got to do, right? This is a Dex slasher team. I don't think this team is really that good. I wouldn't go down that route. Dex shooter team. This actually has some good units on it. Like, this guy being a shooter actually is really cool. Abusing that with this Usopp. This Usopp is not terrible. You've got this guy he's not very good, honestly. But Ace and Frankie together, like, this is actually a usable composition. But I just think that the top Dex team that we talked about is just where you should be going. Like, this top team, as I said, is the same Dex team that I use, and it's incredibly strong. So this is what you'd be aiming to build. So anything similar to this is going to be very, very good for a Dex team. So moving on to my number 4 position, and it's going to be Free Spirit. Now, I think people may be a little surprised that Free Spirit is not higher on this list. However, there are things about Free Spirit that are good, really, really good, but there's also things about Free Spirit that I absolutely hate and despise about the Free Spirit team. The first thing you're looking at here, this is the ideal team composition here. Personally, I have been trying to adopt this Brook on the front line. I think I replace Sanji on the front line. And that's actually really, really good, by the way. Like, this Brook is surprisingly good. You've got like Zoro, he's great defensively. Sanji to recharge your specials. Nami Karina because it's Nami Karina. Otama is a great frontline unit, gives you more special CT in the early stages of a game. But then you got like Luffy, who's like your main damage dealer, and that's kind of the big problem that I have with Free Spirit is defensively and utility and debuff focused. They're like probably the best in terms of bulkiness, healing mechanics with Otama, debuffing the opponent. The only issue that Free Spirit have is they suck at dealing damage. You're really hoping that the counter mechanic of Zoro is like carrying most of your damage. Yes, Luffy can do some good damage, but his special CT is relatively high. It takes a while for him to charge his special. Sanji can do damage, but it's not that much damage, and he targets high HP enemies, which means it actually can be difficult for him to knock out the opponents. So that's the main issue I have, is that you have like this really good defensively focused team that can heal, which means a lot of the time your bench might not even come online because you're just sitting there healing and tanking all the hits, but you don't have enough damage to kill the opponent. Time runs out, you lose. That has happened so many times with me with Free Spirit, and like I've got my Luffy at level 150, mind you, so it can happen, right? But moving on, there are some characters that you could potentially put on there. Kid and Law is another good option. They can debuff Driven and Powerhouse, I believe. They lower their defense with their Rumble skill, with their Rumble ability, their passive skill, which allows you to just do more damage against them. Odin's a good option, ton of damage. Action Bind is great. Rayleigh's another defensive option, probably wouldn't go down that route, but you've also got Luffy Yamato. Luffy Yamato is a straight up replacement for this Luffy right here. I have done that at times where I've just been frustrated with the amount of damage that Luffy can do, because the fact that the fixed damage is like sideways range, which can whiff, and then he only targets one character for damage through defense, like it's just not enough damage. So sometimes going with Luffy Yamato is actually what you want to do. As for the Rumble units, you've got some good units here, like Sandazonia is a good Free Spirit one, Inazuma's great, Rebecca Toy Soldier's great, Law's an option for sure, Rayleigh Gaban, probably wouldn't explore that, Goldie Roger you could potentially use as well. So yeah, that's probably what I like. This is basically all you would go with. Is trying to build with this in mind. So this Free Spirit, as I said, it has so many things going for it, but I just feel like we need new characters that can actually do good damage for Free Spirit, and then I would really like to use this team a lot more. But as it stands, I really don't use Free Spirit all that much in Rumble anymore. I still use it for Grand Party, because in Grand Party, stalling the opponent out is a viable option, and you can't really do that in normal Rumble. So it's a bit of a weighing up between Grand Party and normal Pirate Rumble. In Grand Party, they're fantastic. In normal PvP, they're good, but there's definitely teams out there that I would prefer to use over this one. Moving on to our number 3. This is moving into the top 3 now. Is I do believe currently the Int team is number 3 in the game. Now, in terms of the characters here, they haven't. It looks like I don't see a team with Blackbeard on it. Blackbeard is the key, and he's the reason why I have actually rated the team so much highly. So this is a team comp here. I personally wouldn't go with these two characters on the front line, but again, it's an option. But this key core here of Monkey D. Luffy 10th anniversary, Gecko Moria, and the new Blackbeard. This new Blackbeard is crazy. He is so good. With partnering him with the Luffy, that combo is absurd. And then also Gecko Moria doing what he does, and then having S-Hawk. Like, having S-Hawk makes all of your teams so much better, because he just does absurd damage. If you ever get this character, I would highly advise investing your level limit break wanted posters into him. Yes, you can use it for legends for sure. Yes, you can do that, but let's be real here. It's probably better to do it for Rumble, so your Rumble teams are more potent, because this guy is so good. You can use him for driven teams, you can use him for slasher teams, you can use him for int teams, you can put him on whatever team you want, and he just does crazy damage through defense. He's so good. So I would use this, and then S-Hawk, Dorian Broggy for sure. Remember, with the way the Blackbeard is built, you want to run, I think it's at least 5 powerhouse characters on your crew in order to actually get his full effects to activate. So you got 1 with Blackbeard, 2 with Moria, 3 with Luffy, 4 with Broggy, and 5 with Dory. So that's 5 characters, and then you need like 2 other characters or 3 other characters on your team. I would run S-Hawk for sure. And as for the 2 other positions on the team, I would personally run, let me just see if they've got them both on the same screen here, but I would run this Jewelry Bonnie, 6+ Jewelry Bonnie. I absolutely love using this unit. The defense down in the Rumble ability is one of the key reasons why I have that there, and also the special ability to reverse the opponent's specials. Crazy powerful ability. Like, even without major investments into these units, it's so good. Like, the utility that you get from that, you could potentially go down the route of Legend Pudding if she shows up somewhere. Legend Pudding, also a really good option to help charge your specials faster. I was contemplating between whether I wanted to run Bonnie or whether I wanted to run Pudding. You could technically run them both together, but I went with Bonnie just because it debuffs the opponent's defense, and I felt that to be a little bit more valuable. But you could run Oiran Yamato on the int team as well. I don't think that's a good option though. You've got Legend Rogue, he's also pretty good. Int Yamato, you've got that as well. Like, again, these characters aren't powerhouse, but they're just good abilities. Smoker is another one that I am running on my team. Him with level limit break, like fully invested, Smoker is a beast. his rumble ability giving great buffs to int just generally, and then he gives like further buffs to driven. His special ability is great for special binding the opponent. He's so good. So I think I've been using int quite a bit recently, especially with the introduction of the new Blackbeard, and I have been very, very impressed with what I've seen. I think int currently is one of the better teams in Pirate Rumble, but I will say it is a little bit more annoying to build because you've got the new versus Blackbeard, you've got 10th anniversary Luffy. Gecko Mori is good. He's really good with the fully investments to get more statistics into him, and he's a really old character now, so most people would have some kind of investment into him. S-Hawk is very difficult to get, of course, being a Rumble legend, not being featured on every banner that returns. Dory Broggy also can be a little difficult to get. They are older units now, so if you've been playing for quite a while, you may potentially have them, but again, it's hard to achieve some of these units, right? But yeah, int Powerhouse, like the whole centered around Blackbeard and Luffy, that is what I've liked. But we talked about a little bit earlier with int Cerebral. I think this team is really, really good. So just again, kind of like a side hustle for Cerebral. I don't think this team is number 3 position, by the way, but just a side thing. I think like building int Cerebral is the best way to use Cerebral right now, personally. But yeah, that's how it stands right now. This team's great, and if you have these units, give the team a try. I think it's a really, really solid team. And then we move on to our number 2 position, which is going to be the Psy team. Now, the reason why I have Psy team as number 2, like, yeah, it definitely has, like, it's weird. With Psy team has been like up and down. Like, it's been up a lot, like most of the time during Rumble. Psy has been one of the mainstays. The thing about Psy is that they've made it super accessible now with the recent additions of like level limit break lore, meaning he was free during the Rumble season. You could super evolve him. He's fantastic. They gave out a bunch of those free Psy units, including Rumble Eneru, Rebecca Toy Soldier, Smoothie, Gaban. They basically almost gave you a full Psy team to use in Rumble, and that is amazing, right? So accessibility aside, I think the team is actually very, very good. You've got so many different ways that you can use it. There's so many good Psy characters in Rumble. You've obviously got like Rebecca Toy Soldier and Lore. I feel like those are mainstays. If you're building a Psy team, you're using Lore, you're using Rebecca Toy Soldier. What else do you use around that? Personally, I like this Shanks. I wish I had more investments into this Shanks, because with more investments, this Shanks is going to just do crazy amounts of damage. Unfortunately, don't have many of him because he is an anniversary legend, which means he's going to be more difficult to acquire. I've been using him. I also use, I'm not using Gear 5 Luffy. I'm using Odin. So I'm using Odin, I'm using Shanks, I'm using Lore, I'm using this, Eneru on the bench for sure. Egghead Zora is also pretty solid. Now, if you're using a Psy team to go up against an opposing int team, then this Sanji is also really, really good. He can debuff int characters' defense, and Sanji himself can actually do a solid amount of damage. Only real issue is that he's a relatively recently released character, and he's a normal end of batch legend, so not many people would have invested gems to pull this guy, but he's actually really, really good if you're going up against a Psy team. S-Bear released recently. He can work really well for a Psy team, you know, so that works really, really well. Psy has some pretty decent Rumble Rare recruits, as we already talked about. Psy Yamato is also solid. I don't use Psy Yamato that much, but with her recent level limit break buffs, it has definitely given her some slight increases and to her multipliers, so she just does more damage now, and her Rumble special and Rumble abilities are pretty solid. Kuzan is also a pretty good unit you could potentially use. Germa 66 is okay. They're a little outdated, honestly. They do debuffs to int, so that's again an option you could potentially explore. Moving on, there's like a Psy Slasher focus team. Again, you could potentially use this. Like Shanks, you could definitely use this on a Psy team, so long as you are building for his ability for Cerebral. I can't remember, he's a Powerhouse Slasher and someone else, I can't remember, but he buffs like a whole bunch of different units, so if you build around that could work really well. Goldie Roger, just like a rainbow unit you can use on any team. He's okay. And then Odin, we already talked about. Odin's really, really good. Lore, probably wouldn't use that. I mean, this is actually a pretty good, solid Psy striker team. Like, you got Hina, Eneru. I forgot what Gin does, but the fact that he's a striker unit and you got like a full team of strikers, like, this is actually not a bad team, all things considered. Like, that's interesting. Might have to explore that, but I don't have Gin and I don't have Hina. Wish I did, but then again, probably somewhat replaceable. You've got a Psy shooter team. This looks really, really solid, actually. The fact you've got like this full team of Psy units that are also shooter. making full use of S-Bear, Rebecca Toy Soldier. Like, this is not bad, but again, the main issue with shooters is that they just don't have a lot of damage dealing effects, right? And the fact is like Kuzan is probably one of the hardest hitting units on this team, but they're on the bench, so that kind of hurts him. So yeah, Psy Shooter's probably a little bit of a problem. Psy Cerebral, no, they're garbage. So yeah, there's not really a lot of ways to run Psy, but the way to run Psy is something similar to this: Rebecca Toy Soldier, Trafalgar Law, and then building around that. So having legends of options like Luffy, Odin, Shanks, Yamato, Eneru, I mean, if you've got him, which everyone should have from those missions, and then also the Sanji character, all really, really good options. But again, there's like a lot of options, right? You've got Momo potentially, you've got Shanks, you've got the Goldie Roger, you know, Joma potentially, right? So Psy's got a lot of options, and the thing is, they're just good all round. They've got high special CT, great defense, great offensive capabilities. They've just got like everything. They're just super well rounded and are very accessible from recently released events. And now we get to the meat and potatoes. The number one position, I believe currently at the moment, the number one team in Pirate Rumble is the Slasher team. And I don't think it's been a real major surprise. And what you're seeing on screen is essentially the best team to run. Like, you've got Zoro Sanji. Remember, when you build with this team and you have Zoro Sanji, you need to make sure that you have another Straw Hat on your crew, like this Brook Rumble Rare Recruit. You don't have to run this Brook, but any Straw Hat. So even if it's like a one cost random Straw Hat, as long as it's on your team on the bench somewhere, make sure you got a Straw Hat. Otherwise, he will not activate the haste ability on the rest of your slashes. It's very important that he has that to make full use of the abilities. S-Hawk, we've already extensively talked about him in other clips here. S-Hawk is a beast, probably the best Rumble character that's ever come out. Shanks, one of the main problems with slashers, right, is that they've never really had great defensive capabilities. Technically, with like V1 Doflamingo, I don't even know if he's mentioned here. No, he isn't even mentioned here. Shout out to V1 Doflamingo. When Rumble first debuted, V1 Doflamingo was like the go-to unit for slashers because he provided like defensive abilities and also was pretty good offensively back in the day. But now Shanks basically takes that role where Shanks can do a bit of damage to one target, but he gives attack boost, defense boost, I think a speed boost as well, and then also the shield buff for 15 seconds, which just allows slashers to tank hits that they normally wouldn't have been able to tank. And then the last two units being V1 Odin just feels like he's a constant with slasher teams, with level limit break, ton of fixed damage, great normal damage with multipliers, great rumble ability as well. And then Roger Whitebeard, one of the best rumble specials in the game, full 30% health cut against everything, and then targeting two characters for massive damage through defense. More often than not, when Roger Whitebeard launches their special, you're probably knocking out two characters. Sometimes it's one, sometimes you're going to trigger the revive, you know what I mean? But more often than not, that's going to kill two things. And then with the amount of damage with a max invested S-Hawk does, like these two units, when they pop off next to each other, you're basically killing your whole opponent's front line. And that's the crazy thing about it. You got great special CT, you got defensive capabilities from Shanks, whose CT is relatively lower compared to the rest of the team. So more often than not, he will launch before the opponent activates some of their main specials to do damage to you. So that's really cool. Odin does great damage, Roger Whitebeard big damage, S-Hawk big damage, and then Zoro Sanji, a great supporter style unit that can grant a bunch of further buffs, like attack and defense buffs to your crew, and then can also haste them to the top of the order to make sure that their specials pop off. Sometimes that does get a little clunky though, where like S-Hawk or Roger Whitebeard launch their special, and then you get Zoro Sanji launch their special, where things fall out of order. But the thing is, this character provides you so much bulk that it's probably just worth running over like another offensively styled unit, because the amount of offense you get from Roger Whitebeard, S-Hawk, and Odin is more than enough damage to kill the opponent, so you don't really have to worry about that. Investing Shanks and the Zoro Sanji slot for like support and utility is just way better, honestly. As for the bench, you've got so many different options. Like all the Rumble Rare Recruits you can think of. You've got like Dory Broggy, you've got Egghead Zoro if you're not using Zoro Sanji. You've got Raizo Shinobu, surprisingly being a slasher. This Brook, very, very good. If you're running a slasher team and you have this Brook and Zoro Sanji, that's the key combo, having these two together, because Brook is the only slasher Straw Hat unit that works in this position on the bench, so he's great. He's really, really good. Cat Viper is great. This Shiki, surprisingly, very, very good. He does a ton of damage against opposing slashers. So up against opposing slasher teams, having this guy on the bench come in can potentially save you. Just an option. In terms of the other frontline replacements, you've got like Borsalino, potentially. You've got Cracker, which I was using Cracker over Shanks for the longest time. But I just kind of come around to the fact that Shanks is just better because he adds bulk to your team, which can save you in a lot of cases. And also K-Dad, because K-Dad and Odin have such great synergy together that running that combo is also a pretty good option. Like, if you don't have S-Hawk, replacing S-Hawk for K-Dad or Cracker is what I would do personally. So if you don't have him, I think K-Dad is the better character to replace him with, but Cracker is also another option to make your Roger Whitebeard launch faster, you know? Shanks crew, potentially you could use him. I don't think he's really that great anymore. It's an option though. It makes your team a little bit more bulky, you know. Pell is another great option for your bench. We already talked about Brongi, and then also Karl Matsu. Karl Matsu is another good potential unit you could use on the front line or the bench. Probably better on the front line though, if you don't have this key first lineup here. And then, you know, you've got this other one here, which is Slasher Cerebral. Yes, you could explore this, but if you've got a slasher team, you're probably just going to be running this because it's just better. You could give this team a go. I just think that the other team is just way better, you know. So that's how it stands right now. I think this is currently the best team in Rumble. I think most people would probably agree with it because it's so annoying doing like mirror matches with this team because it's usually just whoever launches their S-Hawk or Roger Whitebeard first usually just wins the matchup. And that's kind of just how it goes. This 10th anniversary Shanks can potentially save you at times where it gives you a shield which can help tank a little bit, but you know, it really comes down to whoever launches their specials first, and that's really all it comes down to, which is just so annoying at times, you know, but it's the best team. It just destroys everything. It's got a solid special CT. It has some great defensive abilities here, but the offense of this team is the best in the game. Nothing competes with this. In terms of the raw damage that this team is capable of outputting. So that's it from me. Thank you so much for watching the video. Really hope this video helped you guys out in determining what teams you should be exploring in Pirate Rumble, and hopefully teams to avoid in Pirate Rumble as well. But that's going to wrap it up from me. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to go ahead and leave a like, and if you want to stay up to date with all the content I post on my channel, including more One Piece Treasure Cruise content, make sure to hit the subscribe button down below. On that, guys, I'll see you guys within the next video.